All right, welcome back, everybody. Brian Schwager here. You know who I am now, right? If you don't know who I am the founder of Wellness Movement Services, and I'm here to share with you an integrated and holistic approach to relieving lower back pain. We're going to move on into part three today. So before we do that, let me just do a brief review of what I discussed in part two. In part two, we were talking about the emotional stressor. So there are four major stressors that contribute to lower back pain, and we discussed, or I shared with you, how emotional stress contributes to our lower back pain. What we think affects our chemistry. Let me go back here for a minute. Yes, what we think affects our chemistry, and what we're talking about is inflammation. What we're talking about is an overexcited nervous system, which can create all kinds of challenges, especially when the stresses are accumulated. You might have financial stress, you might have relationship stress, you might have, of course, you have lower back pain, so you got physical stress. You may have electromagnetic stress, you may have thermal stress, you may have hormonal stress. But all of these stressors accumulate in the body and create a stress load. And when these stress loads go up, it not only decreases our tolerance for exercise, we are not really ready for exercise. And we're going to talk about the readiness for exercise when you're going through pain. But what we're also talking about is as the stress loads accumulate, we're moving more into dis-ease, which the hyphen in the middle just tells us that we're not at ease. We are overly innervated, I like to say. You know, there's good stress too, going on vacation, being in love, but too much of a good thing isn't a good thing. But by all means, I'd rather have more green stress than I would red. But I know people that maybe they are not too emotionally stressed, if you will. They'll tell me, well, my day's been fine, my week's been good, but they still been busy, busy, busy because when you're feeling good, sometimes you overdo it as well. Those are our type A people. So maybe they're multitasking too much, they're overthinking, or like one of my meditation teacher used to say, people are too busy doing and not spending enough time being. We got to do. Our to-do lists are a mile long. But the accumulation of stress over time creates changes to our chemistry. And then the emotional stress can have a direct impact on the stabilization system that is used to stabilize your spine. And it can get inhibited when we're overly stressed. Now, we have acute stress, which means that something happened now. So you walk outside and you got two flat tires. Okay. Or you have chronic stress, and that's like that nagging low back pain or the monkey on your back, the finances. I just don't get along with my partner. And in the back of your mind, you rumble with these thoughts. Both the acute and the chronic will have an effect on your organs. And like I said before, when you plug too many things into a light socket, it will trip your circuit breaker. Well, in the body, our circuit breakers are right along the spine. So when you overload your body with emotional stress, that can start to trip the switches and create tonic tightness, can slow down your reflexes, all because we're living in a state of sympathetic fight, flight, and freeze. Breathing, like I shared, we breathe on average 17 to 29,000 times a day, and we're not breathing the way we were designed to breathe, meaning most of the people that I assess are chest breathers, and they're using their neck and their chest muscles to breathe with. Now, although those are respiratory muscles, they're not, you're not meant to use them as much as we are. And going back to overuse, it's like the sympathetic nervous system. Your body is equipped to handle fight, flight, and freeze. It is designed to handle these acute stressors and but the 24/7 stress that most people are encountering, our nervous system was never designed for that. Just like the person, let's say if they're even breathing, this would be pretty low. If they're doing 17,000 breaths a day, but they're using the wrong muscles to breathe with, no wonder they get tight. I told somebody once, I said, grab onto a 5 pound dumbbell and I want you to curl it 17,000 times and tell me what your bicep is going to start to do. It's going to start to shorten. And when you put the dumbbell down, it's going to be hard to straighten that arm out. So improper breathing pulls the head forward. And, I'll talk about later when I get to physical, how the cervical will affect your cervical vertebrae affects your lumbar vertebrae, basically. But breathing is important to bring relaxation in, to get us more into that parasympathetic response for relaxation. And like I had mentioned, the very first thing I do with people when I really get started with them, finally get to the corrective therapeutic exercise, is everybody's learning how to breathe again. And in the last part, I did share some things, and you can easily go to my website. There's an article on my blog, and you can go to my YouTube channel, and there are videos that help to show you how to breathe correctly. The diaphragm is a spinal stabilizer, which really nobody knows. And later on, when I get into physical, nobody even really knows that we have an inner core because everybody thinks their core is around their ribs. Okay. But the diaphragm is also a core stabilizer. And when you breathe down towards your belly the way it's designed, it contracts. So if you take 29,000 breaths a day or 17,000 breaths a day in the right direction, you're strengthening the diaphragm. And you can see by its attachment points here, it's vitally important for spinal stability. They work in concert with the other deep stabilizers here, your pelvic floor. There's a few others that I'll get into when we get to physical health. And then we go into our learning objectives for today. I'm not too sure if we're going to get into nutritional stress. We might get into the beginning of it, but we definitely need to move forward into biochemical stress because people are really not sleeping. So did you know at least 10 different hormones as well as neurotransmitters go sideways when you don't sleep? And just one night of missed sleep is sufficient to make you as insulin resistant as a diabetic. Healing. And if I may digress for a minute, this approach that I'm explaining to you is as you balance out the four stressors, you release the stressors and you balance out the four principles, your body is designed to heal itself. It always was. It's just that we get in the way. When your rating goes up, you can't heal. So what do you got? You got low back pain? Well, how's your sleep? Well, I can't sleep because my back hurts. I can't get a job because I don't have a car, and I can't get a car because I don't have a job. Yeah, I get it. But in this case, I'm going to make it a little easier on you. I can't sleep because I have back pain. All right. So I'm going to show you some things you can do to get you into a better sleep cycle. And that way, hopefully, you have a better wake cycle. So a lot of people, as you can see here, suffer from chronic sleep disorders, especially now. I've seen it grow like everything else I'm telling you about. It's grown tremendously. When the body is overstressed, its natural sleep rhythm gets thrown off, causing a cascade of challenges. When you sleep, you release anabolic hormones to repair and regenerate. Okay, so let's go back here again. We have a low back injury, right? Or you have a low back injury. All right, so are the tissues inflamed? Okay, yeah. Are they damaged? Depending on the severity of the low back pain and the ligaments and other associated tissues, yes. Do they need repair? Yes. Do they need hydration? Yes. Well, when does all the repair really happen? That's the $10,000 question. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a normal, healthy sleep-wake cycle, your circadian rhythm. A circadian rhythm is the body's natural internal process that regulates the sleep-wake cycle and repeats roughly every 24 hours. It influences various bodily functions, including hormone release, digestion, and body temperature. Light and darkness play a significant role in synchronizing the circadian rhythm with the external environment. And then you can read on here the key aspects of circadian rhythms. So the circadian rhythm is often referred to as the body's internal clock, located in the brain's suprachiasmatic nucleus. This natural cycle repeats approximately every 24 hours, influencing when we feel alert and when we feel sleepy. Light, particularly sunlight, is the primary cue that synchronizes the circadian rhythm with the day and night cycle. Besides light, factors like meal times, social interactions, physical activity, and temperature, and I'll also add for the influence, electromagnetic influences like computers and cell phones, they can all have an effect on our circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm regulates various bodily functions, including sleep-wake patterns, hormone secretions like melatonin, digestion, and body temperature, and other anabolic building hormones. And for our topic, one of the main discussions for interrupting the circadian rhythm is pain. And you're going to soon find that once that's interrupted, that's going to have a major effect on your body's ability to heal the damage from the lower back injury or pain itself. Your body, when healthy, is in rhythm with nature. So again, another way to reduce your stress is go outside, put your feet in the grass for 5 minutes and take a couple deep breaths, look at the blue sky, look at the birds, look at your flowers, give thanks. Number one, the thinking of all that, the giving thanks and looking at what you have to enjoy, that's also going to reduce your stress. But the ground, the earth, because it has its own vibration, that will ground you, because when you're in pain, okay, or when you're upset, your electrical system is out of whack. So you have a direct current in your body. So by getting grounded, you're balancing out the rhythm. So what helps to bring us back into our natural rhythm and our natural frequencies is a thing called grounding, also known as earthing. They say it may play a role in regulating circadian rhythm, but I'll tell you one thing for sure that I know based on all the readings that I've done is it does work, on myself included. So, which is the body's natural sleep-wake cycle. So that's the circadian rhythm, which we just learned about. Grounding involves connecting with the Earth's electrical energy, potentially through activities like walking barefoot on grass and using grounding mats. Preliminary research suggests that grounding can improve sleep quality, reduce inflammation, and normalize cortisol levels, all of which are linked to a healthy circadian rhythm. Now I want to digress a little bit here and go back to where it says grounding involves connecting with the Earth's electrical energy. First of all, it's electromagnetic energy, and secondly, the human body is a cybernetic, bioelectric, and magnetic organism, an integrated multidimensional system of systems. It's fully capable of receiving, processing, and transmitting information. So this is vitally important because as you're grounding, you are balancing out your bioelectrical system in harmony with the natural rhythm of the earth. And this is important because as you're grounding, that is helping your nervous system, which will also help in your recovery and restoration. So whether you're grounding, getting the proper sleep, you're recharging your battery. Your body is like a battery, and it has various battery packs in your body is and muscles are made up of what is called piezoelectricity. And when you're out of balance, much like the overstress response, and you're not getting the proper sleep, you're not recharging your battery. So think of like your cell phone. When you're not able to plug that in, your cell phone doesn't work right because it's losing its charge. And this charge is important to bring the voltage back up in your body. So again, we go back to sleep. That's when you're recharging the battery. You should be. Of course, what you eat during the day and how you function during the day is going to help that as well. But our sleep is important to re-regulate our voltage. Did you know that pH correlates perfectly with cell voltage? At a pH of 0, an extreme acidic condition, voltage drops to plus 400 millivolts. At a pH of 7, which is neutral, we have 0 millivolts. And at extreme alkaline levels, or a pH of 14, we have a minus 400 millivolt. The minus sign means that the voltage of a cell or substance makes it an electron donor. Thus, it has life and energy to give out. If the voltage of a solution drops to the positive side, it becomes an electron stealer, robbing cells of their life force. Cancer occurs at plus 30 millivolts. A healthy body is highly magnetic and it can generate a large amount of voltage. Basically, high voltage equals health, low voltage equals illness. Electricity is a form of energy governed by the flow of a charge of electrical current, all produced by the human body, and we need that current to be in balance, and that's another reason why I advise grounding to my clients, along with drinking the right amounts of water, eating the right types of food, proper breathing, etc., etc. So when you're feeling really good, you're at your right voltage. When you wake up tired, you're drained. Your battery's drained. So what do you do with your cell phone every once in a while? You plug it in to reboot and to bring power to the battery, to replenish the battery supply. Well, that's sort of what grounding does. And you're connecting to Earth. You take a walk in nature. You sit in the garden. We've done things like this where you're outside enjoying nature. You're in rhythm. That's why camping is so cool, you know. But what am I saying here? When you're out of rhythm, go to nature. When you're out of rhythm, get away from the computer. Back off. You know, take a break. Go breathe. It's all about getting back in rhythm, right? So that's what I teach my clients. You want to get out of pain, we need to bring your body back into harmony. And when you're in harmony, this is a good sleep-wake cycle. So you wake up with the sun naturally with cortisol. And as the day goes on, your cortisol should naturally diminish. And then you'll start releasing the repair and sleep hormones to prepare you for sleep. You need to wind down and get ready. You need to bring down your landing gears in your plane before you land it. And there's some other things you should do before you land a plane. You know, you have to bring your body in for a landing. So this is normal. The above image shows a normal circadian rhythm and the rise and fall of various hormones throughout the day. There are two kinds of hormones. There's stress hormones and growth and repair hormones. The black line represents glucocorticoid or stress hormone levels. The white line represents melatonin. We're using this as an indicator of anabolic hormones or growth and repair hormones. We're just using that as an example here. Stress hormone levels normally peak somewhere between 10:30 a.m. and noon, and they loosely follow the rising of the sun. We are designed by nature to do most of our physical activity in the early hours. As sunset approaches, melatonin begins to rise. The rise in melatonin ushers in a dominance of our growth and repair to help us finish digesting, metabolizing, and assimilating the food in our body so we can go into a rest state. So to build, that's the word. If you look at the bottom here, you have anabolic response. To build up is anabolic. So whether you come to me in pain, you're an athlete, or you just come to me because you need to enhance your wellness and movement, this is how you do it naturally. If you want your body to get into a healing state, this rhythm will keep your body in a very healthy state. Between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., that's when your body does the physical repair. Between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., that's when your body's doing psychological repair. So, again, do you go to bed often after 10:30? What time is it when you go to bed? Do you have a hard time falling asleep? I should also mention people have asked me about sleep aids. So, the drugs you take to help you sleep, or if you use alcohol, that's going to mess you up in the long run because to serve one purpose will create an imbalance somewhere else. And with the sleep aid drugs, now the brain is saying, well, I don't need to release these sleep hormones because there's something here in its place. The other thing I get asked is, what is your opinion on people taking melatonin? Well, I can't give you a solid answer either way because I'm not a nutritionist. But what I can tell you is this. Even those supplements can work. I've had people use that to help them to sleep. There's no doubt they do work. But my question is, we're still taking something for the symptom and we don't know why the body isn't producing it naturally. Again, I embrace a holistic approach, getting to the cause of your sleep issue and not just supplementing it with a drug or an herb. Anything that can help somebody to sleep short term, if they have to supplement or take a drug, unfortunately, I get it, as long as there's an exit strategy, because I guarantee you it's going to create more imbalances in the long run. Do you wake up other than maybe to go to the bathroom and fall right back to sleep? But if you go to the bathroom too often throughout the night, that's also telling me something. All right. But if you do get up, do you have a hard time falling back to sleep? And there's numerous reasons why this happens, but it's basically, I'm going to use the word as a blanket word, stress. So again, if in the middle of my afternoon or later in the afternoon, I get acute stress, that could affect the latter part of my afternoon into the evening and my hormone production. If I eat the wrong foods, that could have an effect on it. If I drink too much caffeine past a certain point. So the advice that I give people is, number one, if you're going to drink coffee, make sure it's organic. Make sure you add just a little pinch of coconut oil or organic butter to it. I won't get into that now, but if you have questions on that, just put it in the comment box. So coffee's okay, not for everybody, but it is okay generally. I know people like their coffee, and I definitely love the smell of it. But again, by 12 noon, one at the latest, you got to stop it. Now, the inorganic coffees, the Starbucks, stuff like that, are very problematic because there's other chemicals in there. But as an example, a 16-ounce drip Starbucks coffee has about 310 milligrams of caffeine. Now, caffeine has a half-life in the body of anywhere from 4 to 6 hours. And that's for about 310 milligrams. So you can imagine if you have a larger cup or if you have another cup later, the half-life is going to get longer, which means you're overstimulated later and later into the day, and that's going to affect your sleep-wake cycle. Okay, so if you're having coffee at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, your last cup, so you finish drinking at 1:30, and let's use the 6-hour window. That's 2:30, 3:30, 4:30, 5:30, 6:30. At 7:30 at night before the caffeine is going to be out of your system. Not out of your system completely. So people that are doing coffee late in the day because they need to pick me up or they do it with their supper at 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night, you can only imagine, that's going to keep you up until 11, 12, 1 in the morning. But the point I'm trying to make here is we're messing with repair. And if I might interject here, when we talk about repair, this caffeine is also overstimulating your adrenal glands, which sit right on top of your kidneys. And if you remember from the last part, I talked about the kidneys and its relationship with the psoas muscles, which are part of the stabilization muscles. And look where the psoas is located, right in the lower back region of the anatomy. So as I mentioned in the last part, if energy going through an organ, think of caffeine in your adrenals, is too high for optimal functioning, and the organ overheats, the organ will dump the excess energy into the muscles it shares direct neurological relationship with, first to save itself. And then this in turn creates tone, chronic pain, trigger points, and inhibits joint spinal stability. But what we're talking about is the adrenal glands are neurologically linked to the psoas, and the psoas talks to the diaphragm. So what I'm getting to here is see how it's an integrated holistic approach. And what we're talking about is sleep. Caffeine can overstimulate the adrenal glands, which sit right on top of your kidneys. Your kidneys talk to your psoas gets tight because it's neurologically connected to the kidneys and the adrenals, and that's all part of the load sharing. The body is sharing the load so it protects the organ, dumps the excess the excess energy into the tissues. So you see why it's important to find out a little bit more about how a person is sleeping? This is why I ask these questions. So my client says, really, nobody's really asked me about my sleep. And I said, well, you're going to hire me and I'm going to give you exercises to help build those muscles. I'll just use that as a term. But when you go to bed at night, you're not repairing them. So how is that going to help your investment? You guys follow me on this? So I give you the exercise, people pay for physical therapy, right? And then they got all these sleep problems. So with all these sleep challenges, and now what you've just learned about the importance of repair and recovery, then what we had started to see was temporary relief. Yes, the exercises and some of the therapies, whether they were passive or active, they still worked. Don't get me wrong. But I think what was missing, based on the clients that I started to see in 2009, they would come in my office, and at that point, they were in pain again. And they would tell me, well, I've tried all these different approaches, and I heard you're different. And that's when I started to ask more and more questions, and it started to add up. So the emotional stress ratings were high, they weren't sleeping, they weren't getting the proper, they weren't meeting their proper circadian rhythm, and so on and so forth. So it was really interesting to me that I started to see, once I started to address these lifestyle factors, then we got to the cause. I get it. I had one client, she was actually said to me, nobody really even asked me about my sleep. I said, well, maybe that has something to do with you having to spend the last 10 years in and out of pain because nobody's got your sleep cycle right. You're not repairing. Okay, so what am I getting at? So somebody comes to me in pain, and this is an unhealthy, imbalanced circadian rhythm. So now you're in a catabolic state. Catabolic means to break down. Well, you're already coming to me in pain, so I already know you're in a catabolic state. And I ask you a couple questions about your emotional stress, and your number one stressor is your physical because your back is a pain in the you know where. But maybe you lost your job, you're having problems with your relationship, your kids are driving you nuts. There are other things that are stressing you out throughout the day. Spending too much time in front of the computer, we should be turning these things off, at least 1 to 2 hours before, no cell phones. Right before going to bed, you don't want to go to bed with your laptop on your lap or your phone in your face, because using computers and cell phones before bed can negatively impact sleep quality. Exposure to blue light emitted from screens can suppress melatonin production, making it harder to fall asleep and potentially leading to poor sleep quality. Additionally, the stimulating nature of screen activities like gaming, social media, or work can keep the brain active and delay sleep onset. But look at the hormone cycle. So we go back to the other image. Remember, the white line represents melatonin. We're using this as an indicator of anabolic hormone or growth. And the black line is sort of your cortisol, your stimulatory hormones. And here, look at the black line as the predominant line throughout the day. Brian, nobody's ever taught me like you're teaching me. I know. I'm empowering you with education first. Anybody can give you an exercise, give you a pill. Nobody's really teaching people the how and the why. And if you're watching this, you want to know the why and the how. So I'm empowering you with knowledge that doesn't really get oftenly taught. Some may include high work-related stress, relationship stress, being stuck in traffic. How many people, somebody cuts you off and you react, or I tell people this, if you get stuck in traffic, practice your diaphragmatic breathing. You're not going anywhere anyway. What are you going to do? I do it. I get stuck in traffic. I'll be on my way. I remember one time I was on my way to my very first appointment at a new clinic here in Jacksonville. And I wanted to show up early, so I left early. There was a traffic accident, and traffic was backed up. And I'm in the middle of it. I can't go backwards or forwards. I'm there. So I texted the clinic and said, I'm running late. And she said, well, it just happens that that patient is stuck in the same traffic. So I'm like, oh, all right. Well, that makes me feel better. So I turned on some classical music and started my deep breathing. And I didn't get on the phone. I didn't get distracted. I just breathed and just enjoyed it. What are you going to do, right? But if I were to get on my phone, maybe I would get distracted, get stressed out with something else. But if you're going to do a little buddy call to help pass the time, but you get what I'm saying? Traffic, waiting in line at the grocery store, nobody's got patience. I'm waiting in line one time, and this lady's having the hardest time trying to get her card to work on the card reader. And people behind me are going into different lines. And I just said, no, I'll wait here. And the lady's apologizing to me. I'm like, no, 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 this gives me a great time to work on my patience. And I'm not kidding you. It's a great time to practice it. And I finally get up there, and the cashier goes, man, you are just so patient. I really appreciate that. I said, well, it takes practice. I said, I teach this to my clients all the time. You want patience? I was just given an opportunity to practice it. You want to learn to throw a baseball? Go out and play catch. You want to learn to ride a bike? Get on a bike. Okay, all of which can affect a person's ability to get a good night's rest. So what are we talking about here? Rest, restoration, repair. You got back pain? You got high emotional stress? You need your rest. And majority of the population isn't getting it. Now, I also associate the biochemical stress with hormones. And we just talked about the sleep hormones, the restoration hormones, the anabolic, if you will, for repair, and then the stress hormones like cortisol, adrenaline. We overuse these systems, and it really begins to screw up our hormonal rhythm. So one of my clients said, I woke up in a pool of sweat. And I said, would the air conditioner break? And he goes, no. And I said, well, that's definitely a sign of hormonal imbalance. I said, how often has that happened? He goes, well, that's been twice this week. I said, oh. And then while he was standing there, His feet, he's in his socks, he's standing on a matted surface. And I had him come forward, and it was like there was a big, not just a little, but a kind of a big damp footprint on the floor. So come to learn, his diet has been off, his sleep has been off, and wouldn't you know it, his shoulder issue went up. All we really have to do is make some corrections in the breathing, your emotional stress, how you manage your mind, give you some tools that will help you to get better sleep. Some of the advice that I give for that is, learn to put your phone on airplane mode and do not bring it into the bedroom when you go to sleep. Okay? Number one. Number two, if you can, turn off your Wi-Fi. This short video clip was taken from a virtual interview I did with a client who came to me with pain. I'm going to let him explain some of the things he did to help improve his sleep-wake cycle. Share with him what you did to bring your sleep cycle, your sleep-wake cycle into a better rating.
The thing that really helped for me is, understanding the importance behind sleep from a recovery standpoint and letting your body regenerate and recharge. And for me, it was really all about, wanting to ensure that I was doing what was best for me and my physical health. So that helped me, sort of fall back into, when it's time for bed, it's time for bed. And then, I mean, even to recently understanding about when I drink coffee throughout the day, and knowing not to go too late in the day because that can have effects in the evening. And the other big aspect too is that the phone, and some tricks there is, I put my phone in the red light mode before sleep. So if I am on it and that's something that I can't avoid, at least I'm not being blasted in the face with blue light. That's going to make it even harder to fall asleep when it's time to fall asleep. And also understanding, that you can put your phone in airplane mode, that you can, turn off the Wi-Fi and do things like that where you're not being blasted to with EMF radiations. And that's kind of a deeper level of things. But when I started doing that, it really changed the game for me outside of just being mindful when I'm going to bed. And what
Watch your input. In other words, the computers, watch your input 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed. Now you're gonna do your thing. I get it. People getting, they're emailing, texting, and some people even work late in the evening. But just beware. That's stimulating the light, the blue light. That's why I wear these glasses. I don't wear glasses because I need them for reading. I wear them to help mitigate the blue light that's coming off my screen, which affects my. Try to be more mindful and not to have caffeine after 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock at the latest, your last meal. You don't want to be eating really late because that digestion is an energy producing system. If you're eating late, you're not going to get proper sleep. You can close your eyes and go to bed. Doesn't mean you got restful sleep. Not all the time. Do you ever go to sleep, sleep through the night, get up like you can go back to bed? That's what I mean. Sleep. All right. So what are we doing? This is what I call sleep hygiene. So these are examples of things you can do. And the last thing too, here's another good one, is I don't get into any constructive or intellectual deep conversations 2 hours before I go to bed because it gets my left brain going. And that's the bugger. That's the one that's your monkey mind brain. I do enough of that during the day with my thinking, analyzing, research. I have to know when to turn off that part of the brain and maybe turn on the right part for a while. Maybe do a little light crossword or I journal. I write because that's good for the right brain. Plus, it gets the emotions out. Do a little light reading, nothing technical, no drama, action, preferably. I mean, you know what I mean by drama. I don't want you to get a startled response because you're reading one of those kind of books. But reading is good, not online, because you read from left to right. And that's also good for the brain, which is also going to be good for. I also read before I go to bed, too, a little bit. All right, so I hope that helps. I think what I'll do is I'll save nutrition for next time. We'll keep the video shorter and use some of these tools. Now you're having a better idea how, the lack of proper sleep is an increased stress, which is the second of the four stressors that can affect and have a direct connection to your lower back pain. I look forward to seeing you in part 3 when we talk about nutritional stress. Bye for now.